Hey, 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 welcome to the HVAC Guide live show where we talk about HVAC. If you're a pro or a homeowner, I think this show is for you. Thank you for taking time out on your Tuesday night to hang out with me. And I've got some good stuff for you. Got quite a few things that I'm going to cover tonight. I've actually got a big announcement. So if you guys that, always keep me on track, if we get halfway through the show, if we get close to 9 o'clock and I have not made that announcement, please remind me, because that's how my brain is. I'll get going and I'll forget. But I do have a big announcement I want to share with you in a little bit. Before we do, if you are joining us and you're in the chat, say hello. Just hey here and where you're from. I always like to see that. It's always kind of fun to see where everyone's located. And of course, good to see Bob as always. Brian, good to see you. SFL, nice little, I'll give you a wave back. And Pedro, good evening and welcome to the show to you. So, yeah, Matt says Knoxville, Tennessee. Nice, nice. Actually, I think I want to make it to Tennessee. It's always been on my bucket list to go to Nashville. My wife has been like 3 times without me. It's always been a girls trip, and I want to go on a girls trip. Is that weird? Ryan says North Carolina, of course. Good to see you, Ryan. NF, homeowner from Oregon. Nice. The Pacific Northwest, where it can get clammy at times. You guys have stuff to deal with out there that some of us have never dealt with. Those really high humidity days, but it's also cold, right? It gets humid here, but that's on warm days. It gets dry in the winter here and most parts of the country. So welcome to the show. Let's do this. I do have a couple of news stories and of course that announcement to get to. Again, you're welcome to say hello, and also any questions you may or may not have, you can share those in the chat. We're joined by other pros at times that know answers to questions that I don't, because that's not hard to do. Stump me. But before I get to those news stories, let's take a moment, as always, to thank the sponsor of tonight's show that helps us keep the lights on. Day after day, I'm feeling the same. But today, I'm feeling a change. It's blowing this way like a new hurricane. And it's blowing, I'm feeling a change. Can't stop it now. You can't stop it now. It's season of change. You're coming new. You can't stop it now. All right, man. Eli coming in strong with a super sticker. Thank you so much. Let me earn it first, though. Let me get some work done here. But no, I really do appreciate that. Ryan says Tad is in Nashville, and of course, that's the reason I want to go there. There's no other reason to go there. It's to hang out with Tad. At least Tad thinks so, and I think so too. My wife might think differently when we make it out there. Steve says, "Hey, hi from Dayton, Ohio." Hey to Steve. Thanks for joining us. Okay, let me jump over to the first story of tonight. This is kind of interesting because we've seen over the last 2 years some acquisitions in our trade. We've seen, of course, the merge. I guess that's the words, right? I'm not a corporate-y guy, but when you see the affiliations that some of the brands seem to have, partnerships, if you will. Of course, we saw Bosch and York, that deal go. I think it went through. I think I saw that when we first reported on it. It was all hypotheticals and letters of intent. And I think the last time I heard about that one, and then of course the acquisition of, I believe it was Nortec by, I think, Ream. Ryan would know better than I do. He's really good about keeping up on that stuff. But let's jump over here. Lennox is not acquiring, at least it doesn't appear to be acquiring, another brand per se when it comes to manufacturing, brands of equipment. but this is still probably a big deal. It could affect us, right? It could affect you and the products you're offered in the future, good or bad, right? Probably good, right? But good or bad. So Lennox signs an agreement to acquire HVAC division of NSI Industries, a leader in energy efficient climate control solutions. Announced today it has signed a definitive agreement to purchase the HVAC division of NSI Industries from Sentinel Capital Partners for approximately $550 million. Wow. This market leading HVAC platform includes Durodyne, Subco, and other leading critical component and accessory brands. The acquisition enhances Lennox's ability to deliver a comprehensive integrated portfolio of parts and supplies supported by enhanced digital and distribution capabilities across North America that elevate the customer experience. I think one thing to maybe note here too is, this could affect the products that you're offered, but it also could affect distribution. I can tell you in my area, there is no good supplier for Lennox. When we had to get our parts, we would have to go an hour and a half away. And, I'm kind of out there a little bit. I'm not in a city, but I'm close enough to where a lot of other companies have infrastructure to deliver to us, where companies in my area and the company I used to own, and Lennox was not one of those. So anyway, just kind of throwing that out there. Quote: This acquisition strengthens our ability to deliver complete life cycle solutions. Sorry guys, I'm having a hard time reading tonight. For residential and commercial customers, and reinforces our position as a one-stop partner for the HVAC industry, said Alec Mascara, CEO of Lennox. By adding trusted heritage brands, including Durodyne and Subco, into our portfolio, we are responding to the needs of our customers who have asked for a broader parts and supplies offering. Subco is actually offered at some of the other supply houses too. So I wonder what that is going to look like, right? I mean, maybe that could change. As a company, Lennox just celebrated 130 years of HVAC innovation, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to get through it. We don't need all that. How does this affect us? That's what we want to know here, right? Durodyne and Subco offer a robust product portfolio of HVAC parts and supplies that complement Lennox's current residential and commercial HVAC products and distribution and manufacturing sites across the USA and Canada. Durodyne is known as a market-leading manufacturer of mission-critical HVAC-R components and accessories. Subco provides high-performing, technician-focused HVAC-R parts. I remember some of the tools. I remember Subco had some budget-friendly tools and also some unique tools. I remember one of my employees had an umbrella with a magnet on it, and it was a Subco umbrella. We had one of those cranks that it was like a winch that you could bring equipment into an attic. And I think that was a Subco branded tool, and I had some temperature clamps. So, let's see, blah, blah, blah. We're excited. The acquisition expected to close fourth quarter of 2025, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So interesting. We'll see what this means, right? From what we see offered in our markets, and also what this means for these brands overall. What are your thoughts? Have you purchased any of these parts or tools or any of that? Maybe, just maybe, this could all change these brands again, good or bad, but certainly a change there. It's always interesting to me when brands acquire other brands, and they'll either dissolve a brand, like a lot of times when a company starts, part of the battle is just getting some recognition and the branding. It's always odd to me when companies buy those brands and just dissolve it, right? I remember, and I don't really know all the ins and outs because they've changed names 3 times, but like the whole Emerson, Copeland, White Rogers, and all those companies, and how they've molded over the years and they've changed names and all these things. But they're all, at least I recognize all those names. Maybe you recognize at least some of those names. And it's always been interesting to me to see how companies do that. So, again, thank you to Eli. Emery says, remind me, but should I replace an R22 system? Typo, I meant, yeah, replace. Should you replace it? Well, is it working? If it's working, maybe not. Uh, if it is working, is it efficient? Maybe a newer, efficient system. Um, I think there's a lot of variables behind that. If it's an R22 system and it's leaking refrigerant, then maybe, you might want to replace, especially if it's a problem child. I remember years ago, we would have systems that would leak and then you'd top it off every year. There's no more topping off. This stuff's too expensive. You want to get a good permanent fix, at least you hope. And then, you not have to put any more money into that system, at least for a while, right? Ryan says, I would really like to see a detailed install Daikin fit, or I'm sorry, really like to see a detailed install Daikin fit install. Gotcha. With commissioning when you get back in business. Hopefully you're back soon. I do have some announcements on that front coming soon. But I'm not quite there. Not quite there. And it may not be as simple as um me just being a business owner again. I will say, um, if you are in the business and you are interested in advertising your business, it has been interesting to me how hard. I've said interesting 10 times tonight, but it's been odd. I'll say that, not interesting to me, how many companies, especially local to me, that do not want to advertise their business on our channel. And I'm doing it for free. Like, it's not like I'm like, advertise on my channel, give me money. No, it's free. The only thing I ask in return is to do things like what Ryan is describing here. Let's do a video. You can plug your business and we will install a system and we'll show homeowners some things that maybe they don't get to normally see. And that's my pitch. And it's crazy to me how many companies don't take me up on that. And it's not just in my area. I remember a couple years ago, I was doing a trip to Houston and I reached out to at least 20 companies and I show them my channel. And I think a lot of companies shy away from, especially the content that I'm making, because they don't want homeowners to be educated. They want them to, just kind of remain in the dark about things and spend money with them. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but it's always been odd to me. I would have, especially starting out, I would have jumped at the chance for a large, YouTube channel that homeowners across the country are watching, to let me advertise on their channel for free, So if you're a pro, let me know, especially if you're in Virginia. But if you're, we can talk if you're not. Lennox partnered with Samsung too. Okay, good enough. I know Bosch bought JCI and Nortec was bought by Rheem in 2024. That's it. That's the one. Lennox is pretty popular in my area by large and small contractors. When I was getting bids a couple summers ago, I would ask about the history of leaks and would get interesting replies. I bet you did. I remember asking a guy when I don't know if y'all remember a few years ago when President Trump was running for office the first time, he had that whole deal with Carrier and he went to one of the factories or something like that. I don't know if you guys remember that. And then he they were going to shut that factory down and he saved it. And then years later, they shut it down anyway. And I remember saying something to a guy in my area that was a Bryant/Carrier dealer. And it was interesting, his reply as well. They they always justify it. So like if you say, "Well, does it bother you that the brand that you're installing is imported?" And they'll say, "Well, it's all imported." They're all imported, right? That was kind of what he said. Jacqueline, hello to you. Ryan says, "Doesn't Lennox own or financially support the quote experts unquote HVAC companies? They are franchises like 1 hour." I'm actually not sure on that. There's another franchise. They're either franchised or or just simply gobbling up all these companies. But there's another one in our area. I forget what it's called, but it's like Neighborly. I don't know if that sounds right. Neighborly. Um, Let me look that up because there's a couple big ones that are expanding, out there. Let me see if I can track down a couple of them here, because I don't know if they're franchising or if they're just simply just getting to be really big. I'm not seeing it on that website. Um, yeah, I don't remember, guys. Um, and I don't want to say something inaccurate on that front. People love to come after you if you say something inaccurate. We're not a franchise. How dare you tell people that? Um, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, there's a couple of them running around now, and it's hard to keep up with. Getting back to your question. It's hard to know who's affiliated with who these days because they're probably all affiliated. You know, there's like hundreds of brands, and there's probably really only about three major companies or groups, right? They're all in cahoots with one another somehow. Brian says, "Fix the unit. Just replaced an R22 compressor. TXV was bad. Found the issue." Nice. Yeah, I tell you, the pressures alone uh, is an argument enough. With today's refrigerants, I'm a big fan of getting back to R32. A single component refrigerant. That's kind of cool. But even in the argument of any of them, 410A, 454B, or R32, they're all higher pressures, triple the pressures in some cases than R22 was. And I think that alone is an argument for, you know, maybe trying to get a little more life out of it. Yeah, it just kind of depends. Every situation is different. Emery says, "I am a Lennox owner myself." Oh, okay. Very cool. Brian, I am here. Good to see you. Greg, are you guys seeing more distributors charging a warranty handling fee of between 50 to $100 popular in Charlotte and South Carolina? Yes. So I'm seeing that in our area. More and more companies that never charged that before. We're starting to see some supply houses. I um I'm torn on that, if I'm being honest with you. I think a part of me says it's ridiculous uh that that it's their warranty, it's their equipment. But the other part of me, especially when it comes to some of these middlemen, these supply houses, I can see why they might say, "We're not the manufacturer, we're not the ones providing the warranty, and we're having to do a gob of extra work to try to honor this warranty, especially from a paperwork administrative standpoint, and we're going to charge some sort of handling fee," or whatever verbiage they use. It's I could kind of see it both ways. I'm not happy about it regardless, as still I've still got enough contractor in me to not be excited about it, no doubt. Steve says, "There have been private equity acquisitions of local HVAC plumbing and plumbing companies in my area." Yeah, they're certainly making their rounds. We just had another very large, it's actually two of them, companies in our area get acquired. And so now they're kind of together under one roof. Um, it's That's the thing, when folks say there's no money in our industry, folks would not be investing in our industry if that was not the case. There's certainly money to be made. And unfortunately, a lot of times the end consumers are the ones paying for that. Um, so I, I think business is business, capitalism is capitalism. But I will say, if you can make it, I have never seen a brighter time for heating and air guys. So if you're a technician that goes out and gets all the proper licenses and insurance, and you can go out on your own, I think the future is bright for a lot of those ambitious individuals that are willing to go out there and start something, because the things that a lot of those private equity companies bring to the table, whether it's an extra cookie, or I call them cookies, but some sort of perk to choosing them, or maybe some fancy CRM they're using, or whatever it is that they're bringing to the table. There's always something to be said for that guy that is down the street that you can trust, your local heating and air mom and pop business, and there's still a place for that. Now, I can appreciate why folks, maybe why you like a larger company. You want somebody that's Johnny on the spot, and you don't mind paying a little extra for certain perks and services. Got it. But I can also see the argument still there to be made to, somebody that's ambitious enough to go out on their own. The future is really bright for someone in our industry, partly because there still isn't an advantage out there when it comes to all these new technologies that are coming out. If you can be someone that's willing to learn and specialize in our trade, and even niche down into one product. If you can be the guy, if you can be the guy that's the best at duct cleaning, or the guy that's best at mini splits or inverters or heat pumps, or whatever your thing is, that, yeah, there might be somebody else in your market that's offering that, but it's your thing. People call you to come fix it when no one else can figure it out. Man, you can really make a great name for yourself, even if you are a 1, 2, 3 truck company these days. I mean, the future would be bright for somebody like that. Emery, I have a Lennox too. Nice. I didn't know that about you, Ryan. I know you talk about your Daikin mini split a lot, so I did not know that. Andy says, Boston here. Hey, Andy, welcome to the show. Neighborly, that's the one, right? Is that the one I said? There's like Hey Neighbor, and then there's Neighborly. There's like a couple different ones out there that are franchises. Ferguson just stopped handling Goodman warranty parts. Whoa. You have to send them off if they ask for it, and will get warranty pay through the mail. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Devin, what area are you in? Where are you at in the country? Because that's pretty groundbreaking right there. That would be groundbreaking in my area, because Ferguson is the largest Goodman dealer in our area by far. Anthony says it's happening here in Charleston. I've heard of Neighborly. It's a home services conglomerate. Yeah. Conglomerate. That's the word. We're starting to see a bunch of those. AirServe, 250,000 buy-in. Woo. Yeah. So that would definitely be a franchise then, because you'd still be the owner of the company. Right. And, but you would be plugged into their system. So, yeah, that's how franchises work. Emery says, is R32 only in mini splits, or are standard split systems equipped with it? Yeah, so Daikin's putting R32 in it and just about everything, especially residential. I can't speak for all their commercial stuff, but I think they're pretty much using it across the board, definitely residential. So you buy a furnace with a straight AC outdoor with a coil, it's going to have R32. If you buy a dual fuel, R32, a heat pump, air handler, R32, mini split, 50 to 100. Same for ordering equipment by phone. That's what I want to do myself. Start my own one-man business, Matthew. Matthew, we should touch base sometime, pal. Um, And let me know where you are. If you probably already did, but in case you didn't, let me know where you are in the chat again. Josh, does Daikin say anything about adding a combo disconnect surge protection voltage monitor to end high-end inverter installs, or is their position a surge protector is enough? Well, I think their position, and just like any manufacturer's position, is going to be that they want good, clean power, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing here. And to get that good, clean power, then okay, so Matthew says he's in Knoxville. Yeah, reach out to me, man. Um, but back to the question here. Yeah, so they're gonna. So I'll say this. They've never actually said to me, Josh, every single install has to have this or that. Um, I know the company I was at, we were adamant that they should have bare minimum, especially in my area with the type of issues we have, at least have some surge protection there. But brownouts are just as dangerous for the equipment as far as failure problems. And I think anything that is wired parallel to, I'm probably getting really nerdy, especially for you homeowners, but if it's wired parallel like a surge protector that's bleeding off the ground, that's not going to protect you to a brownout. But if you were to have some sort of monitor that is wired in series that could break power if there's an issue, then you're going to have a better opportunity to protect that equipment. I mean, that's neither. I mean, that's kind of common sense, but they've never actually specifically said on every single install we want this or that. I think the area you're in, how much protection you want, and so on plays a big role in that. Brian says the acquired company is usually the most expensive in town. Yeah, they're showing value in some way, and maybe that's part of it, right? Brian says Zach Ortwine is the NCI duct cleaner of the year in Richmond. Yes, I had someone else telling me about him this week, Brian. You guys have seen Tim DeStasio on our show, and I was talking to him this week, and he was bringing up Zach, and he was actually telling me to call him and get in touch with him. And I need to do that. So Zach, if you see this, I'm not very smart enough to reach out to you. So please reach out to me. I think you just get busy. Y'all know how it is. Somebody will text you and you're like, oh, I need to text them back. And then a day goes by and then 2 days goes by, and we all do it. At least I feel like we all do it. That maybe that's how I justify it. Greg says one man shows are profitable, but a dying breed. Supply houses don't really care. It will soon be corporatized in all trades, I believe. Private equity is in the vet business, trades, hospitals, etc. It's a really good point, because now that I've seen behind the scenes on the wholesale side, they don't care about one man shows. They don't. They'll say they do, but they don't. I've been in those conversations now. I've been behind closed doors, and they take care of the probably the companies that spend the most money with them. I remember companies that spent gobs of money with them and were horrible. I mean, tons of issues. And they would provide them all kinds of perks, because they're such a large company and they're buying so much from them. But then, somebody that is, maybe has, 5 employees and is doing everything right, and then they have one issue out of the entire year of all the systems they've installed, and they provided them very little support. So that probably doesn't give you the warm fuzzies if you're a homeowner that has hired one of these smaller companies. And that's not my goal. I still think there's still something to be said for those folks, and the value that they can bring from an honesty standpoint and so on. But I remember there was one large company that would expect kickbacks and all these different perks just because they're so large. And I remember saying to coworkers, if any of those guys ever leave and go out on their own, they're in for a rude awakening. They're going to find out that all this crap work they do and expect kickbacks, that not everybody gets those kickbacks. They're going to be in for a really big rude awakening. Brian says Ferguson dropped Fujitsu VRF. Interesting. Well, it sounds like they're just dropping all kinds of stuff, guys. You guys are really informing us on all this. Devin says Nashville, Tennessee. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. All right. Um, yeah, I don't know how if I mean I think Ferguson, they're pretty much all affiliated, but the thing with a lot of supply houses is you'll see like Ferguson, for example, sells one brand in one state and you'll go one or two states over and they sell a completely different brand. Like I know they're a big ream dealer in some states. So that's interesting. Brian says AirServe is the neighborly. Okay. They can take you if you don't perform. Oh, interesting. That gives you the warm fuzzies. Josh, have you seen many inverter board failures or compressor failures on high end systems? If so, what percentage of those failures were lack of surge protection or errors by the installers? Ooh, that's a great question, Ryan. I will say, I'll say this. The majority of failures that I was seeing in my last job were the installers. 90% of 99% of them. It was not the equipment itself. I'm not saying there weren't times when they bought something and there was a problem out of the box or, that's different. But when it was installed for a month and then there's a problem and they got to go back, 99 in my experience, unless they were just simply not calling me, but anytime I was getting those calls, the calls that I was not getting was, hey, we installed this equipment perfectly, the bias voltage is correct on the communication side, all the, we have protection on the system, surge protection, whatever. We've done everything to a T. We read the instructions, the airflow is set correctly, here's your static pressures, here's your I mean, everything is perfect, and now we're having this huge problem. That was usually not the case. That I was not getting those calls. Never. The calls I was getting almost always was something the installer did. And I remember some of the companies I would meet with, and I mean, I probably shouldn't be saying all this, but I'm not there anymore, and I'm gonna be honest, and if they get their feelings, if they see this and they get their feelings hurt, well, then do better work. If you're offended by me saying that you're not doing very good work, then just do better work, you know? But I remember some of the companies I would be like, "Well, what's your static pressures?" "I don't know." And I'd be like, "Okay, do you have a manometer?" "Nope." "Okay. Well, do you want to go buy one right now so we can find out what your static pressures are?" I mean, like what do I do with that? you know? Or they would say their compressor has failed, and I'd say, "Well, did you check? Did you run a megger on it? You know, did you even check it with a voltmeter?" you know, it's just been crazy. Yeah. Emery says, "What are your thought on dual fuel? How does it determine to go to gas or electric heating?" Great question. I love dual fuel. In fact, I don't think there's a single furnace out there that should be paired with a straight AC. That's how much I love it. If you have a high end inverter system that's installed properly, that the bias voltage was set correctly, and all the things where, airflow was checked and everything is set up perfectly, and you do a high end heat pump, I think that your savings on your utilities and all of that is dramatic enough to where uh, it just simply makes sense. I love dual fuel. I think the technology is basic, but it just simply makes sense from a energy saving standpoint. And so, to answer your question, how does it determine? Most, I'll just say most systems, because there are a few exceptions, and I'll touch on those in a second. Most systems will have an outdoor temperature sensor it will measure what that temperature is, and it will determine, okay, I'm above that balance point. Now I'm going to use heat pump. I'm now below that set point, and now I'm going to burn gas. I'm going to bring on the furnace and shut off the outdoor unit, lock it out. Now, the exceptions I was telling you about are those systems that will use an algorithm. There are some thermostats that will not measure the outside temperature. It needs to be connected to Wi-Fi so it can do that by the internet. I think that's still close enough, right? If your thermostat is connected to the internet, as long as, if you don't lose, if you lose internet, well, then now you're, it'll probably flip to emergency heat, I guess. But if it sees or if it sees the weather that day and it knows it's supposed to be super cold that day, well, then it knows to switch to furnace. So there's a few other ways out there, but that's the gist. Speaking of power, got hit by lightning Sunday night. Daikin was beeping U4 fridge too. Ooh, no bueno. ICM 870 32A is nice. Let's look that up. And then I will make my big announcement. I don't think that's the ICM that we were putting in, so that's why I want to look it up. Okay. Yeah, no. And that's a good price too. You guys. Let's see. Let me see if I can make my face a little smaller here. The ICM 870 32A. So we're looking at around 225 to 250, depending on where you purchase it. Looks like it's exterior mounted, right? Is that right? Now this says it's a soft starter, that this is not an actual, is this not a okay, so this is not a voltage monitor, or is it? High or low volt? Yeah, it is. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we were doing, I think it was the 970? ICM 9, what was it? 973 maybe? Here I am. I'm on the spot here on live stream. Let's see. I'm not seeing it. I bet you guys would know. It's not the 450. Here it is. What is this? That says 493. Is that right? I guess it is. Okay, so ICM 493. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's right then. Yeah, so that's the ones that we would put in a lot of times. I think a couple other brands have some more budget friendly options now. And this is not a sponsor of our show or anything like that, so I'm not plugging a sponsor here, but that's the ones we would put in. And they were fairly simple. You just wired in series between the disconnect. You'd pull your wiring out of the disconnect and run another whip over to the equipment and wire it in series, and it worked great. So that's what we would usually do at my company. Again, there's other options out there now. But yeah. I have his number. I have a crown. I assume you're talking about the fella in Richmond, Brian. Yeah, Tim was pretty adamant that I needed to touch base with Zach, so I need to probably get around to that. Greg says I gave you my info in the past. You asked for, never heard anything. Let me know if you're still interested. I'm always interested, guys. I'm so sorry if I've ever fallen short on getting back to you on something. I remember years ago, or like a year or two ago, there was a young guy on here that said he was wanting to get in the trade. And I was like, well, let's get on the phone. And he had left me a message at our office, and I meant to get back with him. I've carried guilt about that ever since, that I never called him back. And so I don't even remember who that was, or I doubt it was Greg, but maybe it was. But yeah, I just remember that years ago, and have always felt bad about that I didn't get back to him. So Let's do this. Let's take a break from our chat. And I always appreciate you guys engaging and jumping in the chat and asking questions because, we all know that I have plenty to learn as well. There is I did a video on a conference I went to a little while back. It's called the HVAC Excellence Conference. Let me jump over to there. And the HVAC Excellence Conference, I would say, I'd say anyone in the trade should definitely check it out, and even possibly attend if you can. I think it's very informative. I think there's other great conferences as well. So I'm not saying that it should replace any conference or anything like that, but it's put on by the ESCO Institute. So you already know it's going to be good information. They're always right at they spearhead a lot of the information that's put out there, right? And they do a lot of the credentials and the classes and the proctors and all the different certifications and so on that we all know in our trade. But the HVAC Excellence Conference, if you never saw the video I did there, I don't know, it was just a really cool experience. And most of the crowd there, most of the people that attend, I would say are trainers, right? So they are themselves instructors, trainers, and so on. Um, and they go there, educators, they go there to get information to take back to their classes, right? So there's a lot of trade schools, colleges, uh, you know, distributors and the trainers, those a lot of those folks come to this. And I just found out, this is my announcement. I just found out yesterday or the day before that I am going to be presenting and teaching a class there this year. And so I'm humbled. I'm so honored. And if you are watching this and you happen to attend, please say hello. I'm so excited. Thank you to Clifton and all the folks over at ESCO for allowing me. I've always said I'm still, I'm just a kid that grew up in a trailer park that got good at fixing air conditioners at some point, and I would still probably be, fixing air conditioners at a small company here in Virginia had I never recorded a single video. And obviously here we are. I still record videos. I enjoy it. It's partly pretty much a hobby. I mean, I make a little money off of it, but it's nothing to you know, it's nothing to hang your hat on and ride off into the sunset. I see these people with Lamborghinis. I don't have a Lamborghini, but yeah, if I would have never recorded that first video, it never would have happened. I would never be asked to present at anything, no matter how good I think I am at presenting, right? So yeah, thank you to those folks. And again, if you happen to be there and you see this, make sure you say hello. And that's my big announcement that I wanted to give you guys. Ryan says, I'm thinking of dual fuel for my next system since gas per therm is relatively expensive here compared to electric per kW in my area. It's interesting. I was just talking to somebody the other day they live in Connecticut, and they were saying how expensive electricity is in their area. The good thing about electricity, unlike gas though, is if you can figure it out, whether it's solar or some other form, it is a renewable resource, right? So if you can put, say, solar panels at your home, you're not doing that with gas, right? You're not gonna drill for oil or natural gas or whatever and be able to heat your home. Um, so hypothetically, like these folks were telling me that they went from a $300 or $400 electric bill to some months their electric bill is zero. Some months it might get as high as $80. So that you just simply do the math on that. If you were paying 300 or 400 and now you're paying 0 to 80, that's a $300 a month savings, and that can add up. I mean, we're talking thousands every year, So I don't know. But I'm with you on that, Ryan. I think if I if I had natural gas in my area, I would go dual fuel. There's no doubt about it. I would go dual fuel on the super cold nights. We'd be burning gas on the mild nights and relatively cool, right? Heat pumps are way better than they used to be. On a 20-degree night years ago, heat pumps were ineffective. Now you can still have a 40-degree heat rise sometimes, depending on your airflow and everything being installed correctly. But yeah, we've done videos on this channel showing heat rise on a heat pump system as high as 50, 60 degrees. So, with it being, I think that chamber, I don't know if y'all remember that video I did when I went to DC, but Daikin had me go in. They had this cold room. I was in there shivering, and they had a heat pump in there that was still able to blow. I think it was like 50 or 60-degree heat rise, and it was 10 degrees in that room, 10, 15 degrees in that room. Um, Meaning the outside temperature could be 10 degrees and you still have a heat pump that can produce that good of heat. So pretty cool. Ryan says, I see lots of VRV inverters fail. Really? I have never seen one fail. Not one. Charge is a big deal. Starves oil. Roman ball is the best. Yeah, I've heard that before. Maybe I just haven't been around as many VRVs as you. I don't do a lot of commercial, but we did several VRVs at my company, residential. In fact, my own family bought one, and they've got all these VRVs in their home, and it was VRV is 10 plus tons. Gotcha. Yeah, so the VRVs that we were doing were the VRV life systems, and they were 5 tons or 3 tons or whatever. And you would, do a whole bunch of units inside off of that VRV system. Greg says dual fuel switches over by temperature. I don't think it's worth it in south of mid VA or where the snow line is. Definitely not in South Carolina. It's like having radiators down here, no wet heat like in PA. Yeah, I think if I was in South Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, even Texas, I would probably install a high-end heat pump and not even put heat strips in it. Or maybe I would buy them and put them in there, but never wire them up. So that way, if we had a super, super cold day like that winter storm that comes through every, 30 years, then maybe, you know, but I mean, what's the coldest that it gets in South Carolina in the winter? I can't imagine it getting that much cool that you would need heat strips because I mean, I'll say this, I don't even have a high-end heat pump in my upstairs of my home, and I don't have heat strips in that air handler. So, and it heats just fine because partly because heat rises, right? And then partly because they've just come a long way. Heat pumps are a lot better than they um used to be. Boy who had a tiger. Good to see you, pal. It's been a while. Maybe you've been here and haven't been saying hello, but good to see you. Considering Lennox owns Heatcraft, the Subco move may not be bad. Good to know. I disagree, Greg. I'm in Mechanicsville and pull an AC and drop in a heat pump with the old furnace all day. I said it earlier, especially here in Virginia. I think Virginia, West Virginia, maybe even North Carolina, and then anywhere north of here. If I'm pulling out a straight AC, I'm putting in a heat pump. No doubt, not even a question. And you might say, well, Josh, if it's a dual fuel system, then the heat pump will hardly ever run in some of those states. And you would probably be correct. But why burn gas, especially propane, on a mild day if you don't have to, right? If you could do a dual fuel system, have that heat pump run on those mild days, even if it only runs for a couple hours during the day and then goes back to burning gas at night, right? There's going to be plenty of days where that happens, right? I'm sure we've all seen that. Greg says, Chad, we are talking the same language. Only makes sense in Snowbelt to have a furnace. Sam says, Josh, some of the messages you read on the screen are not found in my chat window. They seem to be coming from YouTube, but are you running more than one channel? Do you know why they don't all appear? Yes. Yes. So I stream to Facebook, two YouTube channels. So the homeowner and the pro channel, uh to Instagram tonight. I don't always stream to Instagram, but we are tonight, and then LinkedIn. So we're streaming to all those platforms. And that's why I remember a few weeks ago, I had someone arguing with me. I was like, "Hey, my number up here on the screen sa- says that I have, I don't remember what it was, but it said that I had like 60 some people in here." And then he was like, "No, it says you only have 45." And I was like, "Yeah, that's 45 where you are. We're streaming to other places here." But yeah, it's pretty neat. When if we have a guest, they can also stream to theirs. So that's kind of neat how they do that. 3 VMS for three phase. Bob says so-called electrostatic filters installed in RAFG were known as compressor killers due to high air restriction. Really? 493 is what you were looking for. Yes, I finally found it, but I appreciate it. Ryan always keeps me straight. Also, those combination disconnect units are getting more affordable. Yeah. Rector Seal, I've laid hands on theirs. It's a decent little product. I don't know if it's quite as um I think that there's just different applications, right? But I've laid hands on their new one of those monitors. It was either voltage or phase monitor, and it was a nice looking little I mean, it came in a box and everything was high end looking. I thought it was really good. I was the young man, now I'm 50. That's funny. What's the announcement? Yes. So announcement is at HVAC Excellence. Yep. Sorry guys, I'm just now catching up on chats. Congrats. Thanks, buddy. Hit the like button. I agree with Brian. Make sure you hit that like button. Air to water and solar. Yeah, I'm looking forward, Brian. We're going to be doing some air to water videos very, very within the next 12 months. You guys are going to see my channel get flooded, pun and not intended, with air to water videos because the future is here. They're launching. In fact, I know of at least a couple products launching next month that will be launching officially by some of these companies. And it's going to be really cool to see that transition because I genuinely think that some of this is for the better. Um, Especially if we can get away from these people that don't want to install things properly and they don't braze with nitrogen and they don't pull vacuums and all that stuff. Well, let's just take the torches out of their hands. Let's just have an outdoor unit that's all in one that homeowners can rely on, and then we'll just run water lines to it, crimp it to the unit, and be done. Right? That's kind of where we're going, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Brian, what's up? Good to see you. What's the topic? I did hit on the one story about Lennox purchasing a number of brands. Let me jump to our other story before we get too far into the show here and share with you guys I thought it was interesting story. Let's see. Make my face smaller. Okay. So this is a story out of Memphis. We've been talking about Tennessee a lot tonight. And it says the schools give update on fleas. That's right. I said fleas, HVAC, and water problems at schools. The Memphis Shelby County Schools held a press conference Friday. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on if your school is having to hold a press conference to address some infrastructure issues in their school. Some of the issues include air conditioning at the Central High School. Several classrooms at Central High experienced HVAC issues Friday. One student was taken to the hospital. Good grief. After a medical issue. That is sad. Hopefully they are okay. The school says there was no report of HVAC issues before school opened after the building was inspected before children arrived. Well, I think whoever did that inspection should be answering for this because I would argue that it would be highly unlikely that everything was working fine and then school started and all of a sudden it wasn't working fine. Someone was going through the motions, they did not inspect things properly, and they should have done a better job at making sure everything was okay before school started back up. After school began, it was discovered that 4 classrooms, see, that's what I'm saying. We're not just talking about one, were without air conditioning. Officials say there was not an HVAC issue in the classroom where the student had a medical emergency. Well, then why are we talking about it? The way these people write their stories, not to call this Jacob out, but come on, dude. What are you doing? Officials say there was not an HVAC issue, flea infestation at the elementary school. The school says fleas impacted one of the 3 buildings on campus at Berclair Elementary. One student received care over the weekend after receiving multiple flea bites. That is a shame. The source of the fleas has not been identified. MSCS says treatment will continue until the fleas are gone. Lead traces in water at 24 schools. A list provided by the district names 24 schools in total where recent water testing showed lead amounts exceeding the standard threshold. MSCS says permanent measures to resolve these elevated lead levels are in the works. In the meantime, faculty and students have access to bottled water and water filtration machines for safe drinking. Yeah, I hate to point fingers and just to call people out, but whoever's in charge of the maintenance here, I'm not going to even watch the story because it's going to be a bunch of hoo-ha. But you know, somebody needs to get it together in Memphis, Tennessee. Not okay, folks. Not when you're messing with the kids. So it's not hard to do your job, right? If your job is to inspect and make sure the AC is blowing cold, then make sure the AC is blowing cold, you know? Let's see. Josh, it's easy to say that from Virginia. You're right. Brian, always add heat strips, ice storms. You need heat strips for when it gets in defrost 35 degrees when it rains at least 5 kW. Yeah, that's you got me there because I was going to say 35 degrees, your heat pumps should still be doing just fine. But if it rains and it's freezing and you're not being able to get good airflow across the coil, especially at say 32 degrees, 31 degrees, that heat pump on a dry night can still produce heat all the way down in some cases to freezing temperatures below 0 degree Fahrenheit. But if you're having airflow issues, I think that's a valid argument. You got me, Greg. You got me. Emery says Duquesne, Armstrong, Airflow are Lennox products. Yep, ADP as well. Should I be on the pro channel? I think the chat is probably more, um, you know, it's going to be more lively on the OG channel, right? On the homeowner channel. But I have seen where the pro channel is getting more and more folks, go on there and be chatting. You have a pro channel, I'll be back. Yeah, it's not real big. It's newer. It's newer. I have a cool one, but it's older. Defrost is only an issue if the air blows on the human. All right, cool. Well, let's do this. First of all, if you again would hit that like button, that's always helps. We all know there's bad apples in our industry. If you know a good apple, if you know a good heating and air, plumbing, or electrical company, share their name and where they're located in the chat. Let's show them some love, and who knows, you might send some business their way. Um, I am. We've got a 1 week. I don't think it's next week, so I think in 2 weeks I'm probably going to miss Tuesday night just to let you guys know. Yeah, we've got some cool videos coming out. I told you guys about the trip I did to Houston. where we got to see behind the scenes at Daikin on a competition that they do. Keep an eye out for that video. Um, and I'm going to be getting more into back to the basics on some of our videos. So where we, address specific issues, and where we're going to get some of that is from you guys. So if someone comments on a video and says, hey, I'm dealing with this or that, which happens, right? People will make those comments. We're going to then make sure that if there's not already, a lot of times people will ask those questions and I'll just be like, I've already done a video on that, you know, but that will play a role in the videos we make moving forward too. So if you guys see me getting back to the basics, that's what that's all about. So I don't see anybody highlighting any companies tonight. So apparently everyone has fallen short this week, and that's okay. We will pick it back up next week and show some love to those heating and air companies. Maybe you guys are maybe of some good heating and air companies, but you're reeling from the bill that you got from them. And you're like, I will show them some love. They did a great job. But give me a week or two, and then I will highlight them. I need to pay this bill and need a break before I start showing them some love again. Ryan says super cool HVAC in the Charlotte area. Ask for Cortland, great guy and technician, will not take advantage of you and treats you and your system with respect. Good enough. Shout out to those guys, and I believe Cortland is, what is that channel called, Ryan? HVAC Technology, I think is what his channel's called, or something similar to that. So he's an actual YouTube creator as well. Brian says, in the past 10 days, my grandkids' school had to call it early due to rolling power outages, only about 98 degrees, not even in the hundreds. Pray for California. We need help. Yeah, California is definitely taking some on the chin, especially Southern California the last year or so. Bay Area says advanced technical HVAC out of Milpitas. Sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. California. So shout out to those folks. No AC. My company is currently adding House Call Pro. I used to use House Call Pro years ago. I don't have much bad to say about it. I think that they were starting to charge prices like they were a real premium company, and I wasn't ready to pay those prices yet. But yeah, I thought their software was great. I don't have anything bad to say about the product itself. Yeah, there it is. HVAC technology or technology, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I don't take it for granted if you're watching this that you have taken time out to watch my fat face and us talk about one of the most exciting topics out there, and that is heating and air conditioning. If you are going to be at HVAC Excellence, shoot me a comment somewhere. Let me know you're going to be there, and who knows? Maybe we can get a few of us together and we can all grab dinner one night out there. That would be kind of cool. So Brian says, I have a cool house in Beaver Dam putting in high-end ductless Daikin. Beaver Dam. Wait a minute. Where's that at? That's near me. Beaver Dam, Virginia. Or maybe it's not near me and I've just heard it. Okay, never mind. That's over close to Richmond. Yeah, that's really cool though. Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, you guys have a great week. I will be back next Tuesday night, or at least I plan to be, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Find out what that time is in your area. As always, again, as I was about to say, I don't take it for granted that you have chosen to hang out with me. So much love to you. Make it a great week. I'll see you then. Take